to the Scaling Japan podcast, a podcast about how to grow your business from $100,000 and beyond in the land of the rising sun.
Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast. I am your host, Tyson Batino, and I would like to thank Rechex for sponsoring this episode. Rechex is a fast-growing recruitment firm in Japan that also runs eJabo, a job board for English-speaking or bilingual tech jobs in Japan and Japanese-speaking jobs in other countries. They have linked to some very useful blog posts they have on Japanese business culture and recruitment in the show notes. So please check them out. And on today's episode, we have John Kirch. He is the head of beqom Japan and has been the Japanese country manager and APAC leader for multiple cybersecurity and software corporations. Since 1986, John has led multiple teams by planning, establishing, and building a successful presence in the Japanese market for leading foreign technology developers. You'll find few people who have as much experience as John in the Japanese market for software. And John has done a previous episode on selling technology product. And in today's episode, we're going to learn more about using a channel partner to expand your sales in Japan. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
As you mentioned, I have spent a significant portion of my career working in Japan, actually well over 30 years now. I first came to Tokyo back in 1984 as an MBA student, and subsequent to that, I worked for Bank of America in Tokyo and then in various other locations around the world. After that, I joined Japan's IT industry in 1986. To introduce various new technologies to enterprises operating in Japan. At beqom, my role is to manage its business operations in Japan. As a brief overview, beqom is a total compensation management software solution focused exclusively on managing total compensation and performance, enabling business professionals working in HR, finance, and sales in very large corporations across the world to realize their reward strategies. We help many of the world's largest companies by enabling them to realize their digital transformation goals by streamlining or optimizing their management of total compensation, rewards, and performance in a manner that meets with their needs and requirements, yet is clear, controlled, and transparent, enhancing employee engagement, performance, and profits by enabling the company to use our software system and support services. Currently, we manage over US $300 billion in compensation annually, and our solution provides companies of any size and industry segment, including companies such as Fujitsu, Ricoh, BNP Paribas, Fidelity International, Mercedes-Benz, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, DHL, and many other well-known industry leaders with the systems that they need to satisfy their needs and requirements in the compensation and performance arena. Our smallest clients have as few as 300 employees in one country using our system, and our largest clients have over 200,000 employees working in over 200 countries around the world. These days, many professionals working in finance, HR, and sales continually struggle to realize their cloud strategies. Our solution helps them to succeed as it has the scalability and the flexibility typically needed by global organizations that have complex needs and requirements that may be unique from one company to the next. We can do the above because our system can be configured to satisfy the needs of any medium or large-sized company at scale. And at the same time, our company can enable a company to manage all of its compensation, awards, and performance data in one centralized next-generation SaaS platform in the cloud on Microsoft Azure.
Before we move on to the podcast, I want to ask one system about beqom and how is its integration with other platforms that corporations are using?
Our system is designed to unify and integrate data from varying information systems wherever those systems are and whatever they may be. This enables companies to bring the data together, integrate it, and therefore to have what I might call a large data lake. And up on top of that, we provide a framework for analysis, for simulations, for managing pay raises, and for reporting the information in a time-effective manner.
Thank you very much for sharing. And so, let's dive into channel partners. I did an interview with another guest named Evan Burkowski, and he's mentioned that the three big ways to really get sales, for a SaaS product or a tech product is inbound sales, outbound sales, and channel partners. And in a future episode, Evan will be covering both inbound and outbound. I really want to get John here today because he's had more than 30 years of experience in Japan to help us really understand the mystery of channel partners. And probably very few people know as much as John on how to utilize them. My first question is really, what is a channel partner and what do they do?
Channel partners are basically any type of organization or perhaps even an individual that works with a manufacturer, a software developer, a technology provider to help that company to basically market and sell its software products and services to varying types of customers. So channel partners might include value-added resellers, VARs, system integrators, consultants, managed service providers, distributors, OEM manufacturers, and independent software vendors.
OEM means original equipment manufacturer.
Right.
Excellent. Yeah, so please continue.
So there's many different types of partners, and some of the key types of partners include organizations that may serve as referral partners. And those are basically individuals or organizations that recommend your product, your service to people that they may know already or to new contacts. And so what the referral partner will do is introduce that new prospective client. Sometimes that's about all they do, but in other times they actually provide active, continuous sales support in terms of arranging meetings and helping to understand and clarify questions, needs, and requirements and planning next steps. A software distributor is an entity that basically distributes software to one or more wholesalers, resellers, or directly to end users as well. So many of them do not sell products to end users, but some of them do. And typically, a company might do to some percentage directly to end users, which is very healthy because it helps them to understand the market and end user needs and requirements and how to go about selling to end users successfully. And they take this knowledge, this expertise, and they transfer it to their resellers, helping them to be more successful. The reseller is typically buying either from the software developer or directly from the distributor, and then providing that product to the end user. And they will typically also provide some services such as, let's say, training services or implementation services.
Excellent. And one of the big reasons I also want to talk about channel partners was, so I'm actually serving as a resident mentor for 500 Global with their accelerator program, but I've been doing research into channel partners, and there's one company, Saibozu, which has Kintone, which you definitely obviously know, but I was surprised to see that even one of the leading Japanese software companies, Saibozu, for their Kintone, I think 60% of their sales came from channel partners, or maybe more than 60%. And in Zoom's case, I think it was 90% of their sales are direct sales by Zoom itself. But in Japan, I think it's the complete opposite, where that 10% actually became 70% in Japan. So what surprised me was just how big channel partners are in Japan, maybe compared to other countries.
I think that the reason for that is people buy from people they know and trust. And as the market has evolved over time, the different distributors and resellers and individuals too, they build relationships, and those relationships are trusted. In fact, the largest cost in terms of selling product, in my opinion, is developing that trusted relationship. It takes time. And so if you can go through a partner, you can leverage the connections and the trusted relationships that that entity already has. And that helps you accelerate your providing product to market and to signing customers. And then in addition to that, different companies have different skills, and different companies also have different focus within market segments. So by having different partners, you can focus on alternative industries, market segments, and different geographies too. By doing that, basically you build synergy, you build brand, and you build success. I think that in Japan, it's really, really tough to simply build a business and go direct to market all by yourself because of the cost involved, for instance, in terms of trade shows or marketing or product localization. And so by having partners, you can enable a sharing of those costs, as well as a sharing in terms of going to market and lowering those costs in terms of your marketing activities.
Yeah, and if you have a partner with someone who has thousands of companies in your specific industry, I mean, just the sheer amount of time that'll take you to establish those connections. I could imagine that'd take like 5, 10, probably even more years to get like thousands of companies.
There's another aspect to it, and that is the amount of annual reoccurring revenue that the sale of your products contribute. And so if your ARR is relatively low, that means you need to sell more product in order to reach a break-even point. And you need more volume, basically, to generate that revenue. And so I think in that case, actually, partners become even more important in terms of bringing your product to market. But even if you have a product like, let's say, Salesforce, or let's say an ERP system, one that is complex, well, you're going to need engineers. You're going to need people that understand the needs and requirements of the customer, the language as well. And you need to have the ability to meet those requirements in the time period agreed with the customer. And so this enables you, by having partners, to have additional resources at a minimal cost in terms of bringing your product and satisfying your customers' needs and requirements in a time-effective, budget-effective manner.
Thank you for clarifying that. ERP means Enterprise, I think, Resource Platform?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for clarifying the importance of a channel partner. And when I was diving into it, I really had a hard time trying to wrap my head around what really is the differences between a reseller and a distributor. I would hear people use the terms often. Sometimes it seemed like interchangeably, but could you maybe highlight some of the key differences again?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Basically, the key differences are that a reseller is generally less closely connected with the manufacturer, and sometimes does not even have a direct relationship with the software developer, as it generally buys products, for the most part, directly from distributors. Resellers also usually do not keep an inventory of products or provide after-sales services, but sometimes they do. It may vary according to the product, to the industry, even to the company, because different companies have different strategies. Resellers generally only sell to end users or wholesalers. And for a manufacturer within an established and well-recognized product, a reseller relationship may be the most profitable because resellers are less invested in developing the market for the product and therefore have higher profit margins for the manufacturer. So as a distributor, you have responsibilities typically for marketing the product as well as providing the product. And a lot of distributors really don't know the product that well. What they are really focused on is marketing, but also moving inventory, receiving the technology from the manufacturer and moving it to the reseller. And of course, it will vary according to the distributor as well as to the reseller.
Next big question on people's mind is, so how much do you have to pay these channel partners on average?
Well, it depends on the type of channel partner, of course, and it varies according to the amount of commitment, and it may vary according to their level of success as well in terms of their revenue contribution. But first of all, in speaking about referral partners, I would say for a referral partner that introduces a prospective client that we later signed, typically we would pay about 5% of net received revenues during the first 12 months of that prospect's having been on board or having signed the license agreement. it could go up to as much as maybe 7 or 10% if that referral partner is not just introducing a prospective client, but they are staying actively involved in terms of promoting our products and services, helping us to arrange meetings, understand needs and requirements, and to discuss and plan the optimal next steps. Now, for distributors and resellers, I would say that on average, we would probably provide a purchase discount of about 20 to 30%, maybe a little bit more in some cases, in terms of the products and services that they directly purchase from us. So we need to be looking at the business model and making sure that everything works out. But it's important that each of those companies also receive a decent amount of return on their investment so that they can be profitable as well. And by ensuring that they are profitable in terms of their dealings with you, you motivate them to continue to work with you in the future. For instance, if a partnership agreement with a reseller distributor includes guaranteed annual revenue commitments, then that percentage that I mentioned earlier may be higher because that particular reseller or distributor is really putting some skin in the game. Then you may have other partners, such as consultancy partners, or they may be other companies like system integrators as well.
Gotcha. And I think kind of going back to like, if they don't meet those agreed upon annual targets, what would typically happen?
Well, typically you'd sit down with them and try to understand the reason why. Maybe the targets were too high, maybe the economic conditions, maybe it was a function of marketing activities or the number of people they allocated or the number of their offices across Japan that are actively involved in terms of marketing and selling their product. So some companies will, at the initial part of the relationship, focus their activities in the Tokyo market. And then later, based upon success, will expand to Nagoya, Osaka, Kyoto, and Fukuoka, and perhaps also Sapporo. So understanding and agreeing what caused the organization to not be able to reach its target, and then discussing how you can work together to ensure that that doesn't happen again, I think is, something that unfortunately every channel manager runs into at times during their career.
How about, I think, kind of moving back into like the different types, referral partners, like around 5%, but how about consultancy firms?
I've worked with a variety of different consultancy companies over the years in the accounting area. And it really depends upon the goals and strategy of that consultancy partner. Are they looking to act as a reseller of your product, a value-added reseller? And I've worked with a company in that regard. And as such, they would probably be expecting to make a 30% approximate purchase discount or thereabouts. And then there are other companies that say, well, we're providing consultancy services. We want to maintain our objectivity. So what we would like is that you enable us to provide all the technical services and consulting services and charge for those, and you will receive the license revenues. But in order to not forsake our objectivity, we would like to forego having a signed partnership agreement. And we would like to also not receive any of your license revenues, because by not doing so, it shows that we are an objective consulting partner, but it also frees us up to, if your product is not the best, we may move to another product in order to maximize the benefits for the customer. And that gives them the freedom to do so. So there's more risk involved.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Now that we know how much kind of like the profit sharing or like the deal making side, how do I actually go about finding a channel partner?
Well, I think the first and fundamental aspect is to really understand, first of all, who are you trying to provide benefits to? I mean, who are you trying to sell a product to? Is it to large organizations? Is it to small, medium enterprise? Is it to government? What is the potential market for your product or service inside Japan or whatever country you're working on? You might also understand not only the size of the organization, but what industries. So what industries are key? Is it the financial service providers? Is it manufacturing? Is it transportation? Is it perhaps it's beverages? But you need to understand what are the key industries that you have the best chance to sell your product and service. Once you have that and you understand the market and the players in the market, then you can put together a strategy. And that is, these are the companies I should be partnering with. It may be distributors, resellers, system integrators. It may include consultancy partners. It may also include referral partners. You may also decide whether or not you're going to, from the get-go, do Tokyo and Osaka, or are you going to focus primarily on Tokyo? And once you receive success in Tokyo, you're going to also build a business in Osaka. In addition to that, you need to be thinking about, how am I going to be selling my product? Am I going to sell it direct, or am I going to sell it indirect, or am I going to do both? You need to put together a business model that makes sense. And one reason for that is, as you know, the Japanese yen does fluctuate. And recently it was, as weak as 150 yen to the dollar. And last time I checked, it was a little bit less than 130. The problem with that is that it causes the price in Japanese yen to vary. And Japanese sales partners, distributors, resellers, really do not like a list price that moves up and down with a great deal of frequency. They would rather that it remains stable as much as possible. So you need to be thinking about, what is my strategy for minimizing the amount of changes in the price? And why do they not like to change the price? Let's say a company has a lot of resellers. Not only once you tell them to change price, then they have to tell all their resellers, and they have to update all their documents. So it basically introduces a lot of different work, tasks, communications. And so by maintaining a smooth, steady, stable price, it gets rid of the need for that price updating type work.
You heard about eJabo from Rechex in a previous episode. And now let me tell you a little bit more about Rechex itself, a recruitment firm in Japan that will help you find your next opportunity. You might ask, aren't all recruiters the same? Rechex is unique in that their recruiters all come from the industries they serve, so they understand your needs. Now that you have upped your sales game through listening to the Scaling Japan podcast, why not test it out and get a career upgrade with Rechex? REACHEXT. Good luck. Never thought about it that way, but no, yeah, it makes perfect sense that, because if you make a sales pamphlet and the price changes.
Exactly. And so most software developers, distributors, resellers will not put prices into a data sheet unless it's a product that has a low price. And then, as I mentioned before, you need to be thinking about, in terms of the price of the product, that will influence your market strategy as well. How many partners you need to have, what type of marketing you need to have, where you're going to be selling your product, whether or not you're going to be using e-commerce platforms, for instance, or not. So there's a lot of factors that go into that equation.
So I know a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they feel like, oh my God, just trying to find a channel partner is, oh my God, so hard. It's challenging. But let's say that we've made it over that hump. And how do you actually evaluate channel partners?
First of all, I'd like to add a little bit more in terms of how to find a channel partner. In terms of that, I would look at your own connections or the connections of your colleagues. I would look at the companies that have already purchased your product. I would try to understand, in terms of those different factors, such as who I'm trying to selling to and what industry and what size of company, I'd be looking for channel partners that have those characteristics. That they're selling to that market, they're selling to that industry, and they've demonstrated expertise. And so I would try to meet those companies at industry events. I'd find them in the media. I'd use the internet to analyze companies, and basically I would put together my strategy. Then once I had them come on board, I would be evaluating them from different aspects. And basically, I'd be looking for verification of whether or not they're selling to the market segment I want to sell to. Do they have expertise in the industries that I want to sell to? What is their interest? I mean, this is really, really important. Is a lot of people will judge whether or not a company should be a partner or not basically on revenues and the number of people. I think a really, really important area is whether or not the senior management team of that organization have a strong active interest in providing the solution that you're providing to the market. Meaning, is this of interest to them? Are they so interested that they would be willing to allocate resources, marketing dollars, people, and other resources to making that business succeed? I think that's vitally important, that you find partners that are actively interested in your product and solution in order to make room for you to basically achieve success together with that partner. So I'd be looking at their market presence. I'd be meeting their people. I would try to understand who their customers are today. I'd be looking at their marketing programs. I'd be looking at their core products and services and seeing whether or not those products and services actually complement the product that I'm providing to the market. Because if they do, then there's a certain synergy that helps them, bring my product to market in a more effective manner. You might also look at the overall product strategy of that company. Do they have a shopping basket full of different products and services that have overlapping functionality and value add? Or are they taking a vertically integrated strategy? So, for instance, they are providing one ERP system that they think is best of breed, one HR system, one CRM system, and how your product fits in with that product strategy that they have. You might also take a look at whether or not they have international offices. What is their level of capability of speaking English? How international their mindset is? Do they want to be exclusive, or are they willing to be a non-exclusive partner? And you might also try to understand their technical expertise by looking at, what awards they have received for their products, for their marketing and sales in the past. And that will give you some understanding of how successful they will be with your own product and service in terms of bringing it to market. So the complexity of your product is an important factor to judge in terms of whether or not a company will be able to understand your product and bring it to market effectively. So some products are very, very complex. Some other products are much less complex. And that can be a very important factor in terms of understanding which companies can be effective partners.
I know Salesforce, I think they have kind of a Partner of the Year award.
There's a variety of different types of awards that are out there. And I'm sure that Salesforce.com does have a Partner of the Year award, but it may be a Partner of the Year award for sales. They may have another one for services. They may have another one for, let's say, product integration or technology that they're sourcing from Japan for their core product as well. So there's a variety of different types of awards that are available. It could be an award for marketing, such as Interop Tokyo Best of Show. Or you could have a partner that has IBM certification or Salesforce.com certification. But that helps for you to understand that partner from, let's say, a marketing point of view, a sales point of view, as well as from a technology point of view. And that's very, very important.
And yes, I guess kind of getting back into evaluating a channel partner. Do you have any other thoughts?
I think that you need to really think about how many channel partners you want to bring on and when. Because if you bring on too many too soon, and you're a new entity in Japan, it can help to dilute the motivation, the interest of sales partners in terms of selling your product, because they may think that you have too many partners. So it may be that you want to minimize the number of partners to help build, the interest, the motivation of your sales partners. But at the same time, you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket. So many companies, when they enter into the Japanese market, they may pick out maybe one company to be an exclusive partner, and sometimes that makes very good sense. But many other times, companies will select maybe 2 or 3 partners and then focus on making those partners successful before they bring on additional partners.
I think I've seen quite a few companies when they go into this. I think that's kind of really the executive decision you need to make. What is your strategy for the partnership deals?
Exactly. In consideration for a strategic sales partner coming on board, you need to show some reciprocity. And that is, you need to make it possible for that partner to become successful, to achieve profitability. And you do that by providing them support services, a good business model. You help by co-sponsoring marketing activities, maybe introducing sales leads to them. But once you sign that company as a sales partner, that's when the work really starts. That's when you need to think about, how do I make this sales partner successful? Once you do that, and the company is starting to develop their own sales leads, bring them forward, close the deals, that's when you've really achieved success in my mind.
Cool. And yeah, let's dive into that. So I think now that someone has found the channel partner, how do they onboard and manage this channel partner to achieve success?
One of the caveats I have in terms of doing business in Japan is that I try to minimize the differences between what I'm doing in Japan and what's happening in the home office. And there are some things that need to be different. For instance, I can't sell in US dollars in Japan. I need to be able to make a fee quote in terms of Japanese yen. I need to have materials in Japanese. But what I'm trying to refer to is that I will take the onboarding process that has been developed and is used by the company in its headquarters or in other key markets, and then I will bring that to Japan, and then I will do my best to minimize the number of changes I make to that onboarding process or plan while making it effective for the Japanese market. So I only make changes that I really need to, that makes sense. So I will take that plan, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to review it with my potential partner. And that may be even before I sign an agreement with them. It may be part of the partnership agreement as to what the onboarding process is from a high-level point of view. And once that agreement has been signed, I will then introduce to them a proposed onboarding process with various tasks and activities over time. And once I have their agreement, then I'll go forward to deploy that onboarding plan. One of the things I will be looking for is, well, John, for instance, during the training, we need the slides in Japanese, or we need an interpretation of what a person is saying into Japanese for the attendees to understand. So I'll be looking for suggestions or questions from the partner on how I can make that onboarding process more comfortable, more effective for him. Maybe I do the onboarding training session in Tokyo, and then I do another one in Osaka. What is that plan? And you need to go out of your way to make sure that it is comfortable not only for yourself, but it's also comfortable for the partner.
Because I've heard cases where sometimes the company might even want like 70%, but in that case, they'll be doing the marketing, the sales, they'll be doing a lot of things. So I guess the more support that you can provide them, that can also help you in your negotiation with maintaining a higher share of the profits.
I think that you need to divide up the workload, and you have to agree respective roles and deliverables by the partner as well as by yourself. And then once the agreement is signed, you need to go out of your way to help them to be successful.
Excellent. And I think that's great feedback. And in my experience too, it was not in tech, but I did have a partner for the language school. We did branch out in a new service. I mean, it took me 2 to 3 years to figure all these things out, but we have a really good relationship. I think a lot of things you mentioned would contribute to that.
One thing I'd like to add, Tyson, is that the onboarding process is not a one-time only event. You provide the initial training and onboarding, but you may need to provide periodic training updates to the people that you already trained. Or it may be that you're working with the distributor to train their resellers, maybe one by one, or maybe together as a group or groups. Or it may be that after you train the people in Tokyo, you train the people in Nagoya and Osaka. So you need to be basically open to repeating that onboarding process as needed to help that partner grow and succeed. And actually, one of the most important documents I have found in the localization process are the training documents, because the training documents are not just a user guide. They actually take people from step 0 to more advanced. And so if you have that in Japanese, if somebody's knowledge is a bit rusty, they can go to that training guide or those training slides and they can refresh their memory. In addition, I like to include exercises. Some people might call them tests, but it's basically taking the information that you provide to the sales partner, to the people that are attending, And you're basically asking them questions, and it helps to improve their information retention. The last point is you may have different types of onboarding exercises. One might be for sales and marketing, and the other one might be for the technical people. And so it's very important that while the entry level modules might fit both groups, later on, the technology area may become a bit too technical for the marketing and sales people. And so it might be a good idea to basically focus on providing that information to the technical support team, the sales engineers, and the technical support people that would be utilizing the products hands-on.
Thank you for sharing that. And so let's kind of take it to the next stage of the relationship. You did the initial onboarding, and I think you mentioned other ways of continuing the onboarding process. Because, it makes sense because, their staff changes.
The staff changes, but not only that, the market changes and your product changes. And so you're building in new capabilities, new features in order to better compete in the marketplace. But the market may also change in terms of new needs and requirements. So there's a variety of different sources where these new needs and requirements may originate. And because of that, it's important if you're going to ensure that your partner sales and marketing people have all the information they need to have to most effectively compete and to represent your company, you need to periodically provide them with training updates.
So I think, that comes in the part of the management of the channel partner. But could you tell us a little bit more about how to manage the channel partner?
There are different types of partners and you have different types of products. So one of the things, and if you were thinking, for instance, about SaaS products, and SaaS products typically support hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, maybe more. And so if a product goes down, it can cause a huge negative impact. Therefore, in the SaaS market, it's important to provide what I call proactive support. What that means is that instead of waiting for a problem to occur before you provide new information, you're thinking about, what do I need to do to maximize the uptime of my partner, to maximize the chance that the system does not go down? In terms of managing partners, one is, what are you doing in the market? And what possibly could happen, worst case scenario? And how do you mitigate that before it actually does happen? Now, in terms of doing the regular day-to-day management of a partner, I think that the agreement between the sales partner and yourself should include mention of the key KPIs, key performance indicators, that will be used to manage the partner relationship. So you need to know what those metrics are. You need to update them. You need to share them with the partner in terms of what their results are. And you need to guide them in terms of doing the best possible to achieve success, to maximize their ability to actually realize those KPIs. I think that another aspect is to proactively look for ideas, opportunities for that partner. And instead of waiting for the partner to sell your product, the mindset of, how do I help the partner to successfully sell my product? And therefore, if the partner has a booth out at Big Site or Makahari, maybe you work in the booth. If they put together a Japanese data sheet or pamphlet, maybe you review that or you have it reviewed by people to ensure that it is correct. When they are selling to different potential customers, maybe you go along with them to the meeting. Maybe you help them to plan for the meeting in terms of what questions to ask. Maybe you help them to answer questions. So you might have expected questions from the potential customer, but what would be your recommended answer? So, coaching the salespeople, bringing them sales leads, working with them to achieve success, and doing that regular reporting on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, and agreeing future marketing plans and sales plans and how to make the business perform better, not only for themselves and for the customers, but also for yourself.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Scaling Japan. In addition to serving as your fine host, I also provide advisory and coaching services to business owners who want to 2x, 5x, and even 10x their business. So stop holding your company and your team and your employees back, and let me help you and your company scale. Find more information at scalingyourcompany.com. Now back to the episode. I think those are some very useful tips. I think you gave a mixture of, one is how can you help them make more revenue? But also a big part of it is how do you really reduce a lot of the friction that's in the way for getting them to sell your product?
One of the things, Tyson, that's very true I found during my career is that once you sign an agreement with a new sales partner, many of the sales representatives of that company will be a bit nervous to market and sell your product. Why? Because they've never sold it before. It's like they're taking a risk because they don't know if your product can really meet the needs and requirements of the customer and whether or not your support services are going to be responsive enough to satisfy the needs and requirements of the sales partner as well as their customer when things don't operate the way they should. By getting involved in the sales process for the first customers and helping them to achieve success, but when they have a problem, when they have a challenge, when the customer has a problem, you step in a timely, responsive manner, and you help them to fix the situation and to get back on their feet. This is very, very important. And if you do that, then the sales partner representatives will gradually, over time, they'll develop confidence. In fact, they'll develop a certain willingness to assume risk. And that can be very, very healthy in terms of bringing your product to market and maximizing your success.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people, when they fall in love with their product and they want to sell it, they sometimes really forget about the other person.
Right.
And I think kind of like how you mentioned, it's like in these people's cases, they're going to sell to partnership companies. And if they sell them a faulty product, that this pretty much cut the line from them. And they need to generate sales to put food on the table. So anything you can really do to really de-risk their situation would be the first step to creating more engagement.
Exactly. Instead of waiting for the partners to make you successful, get out from behind the desk and look for ways where you can contribute to their future success. Let them take ownership of that success as much as possible. Let the success be theirs. That will help to build engagement, a good working relationship. But I'm also a fan of exposing the business to senior management of the partner. And if you can build a solid relationship, not only with the sales managers and the sales reps, but also with the vice president of sale or the CEO of the company, you can make the relationship between the technology provider and the sales partner much more strategic. And that can have awesome benefits for them, for the customers, as well as for yourself.
I guess since I come from an HR background, and a big part of it is how do you set up the staff for success? And it's, I think, a lot of the things, they interrelate into making a sales channel partnership a success.
That's one of the reasons why I'm a fan of direct sales. If you know how to sell your product yourself, you're not just a channel manager, but you can sell it directly to a new prospect and close the deal and help them to deploy successfully. Well, what that does is it gives you the understanding, the know-how, the capability to coach and to make recommendations to a channel partner for them to also realize success. I think that if you can't do it yourself, it makes it far more difficult and far more risky for you to be managing the channel partner and providing them with recommendations.
As we were preparing for this chat, I think you told me a little bit about, let's say, really trying to get validation first before really trying to get the partners to bring in bigger deals. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get the ball rolling in Japan with new technologies because there are no customers in Japan. So how do you deal with this? And there might be various ways by which you can, for instance, provide use cases, or you can take relationships that you already have, such as maybe you have a customer in the United States that has a close sales partner in Japan of some size. Maybe they could use your product. But you're looking for companies that are related. Maybe if you're selling your system, you're providing it to Coca-Cola in the United States, maybe you can use that to open the door to Coca-Cola Japan. But the sooner you get use cases in Japan, you get companies that are up and running, using your product. It may be that the first customers are actually only using it in English. And then later on, you are able to bring on Japanese companies that are using it in Japanese. And then there's a question of whether or not, to what extent product localization is needed. If it's like a word processor or it's a HR system that's widely used by every employee in a company, then the GUI needs to be in Japanese. But if your system is a back-end system, like let's say a cybersecurity system, then what is needed in terms of product localization can be quite different. And so having a roadmap as to what is necessary in terms of product localization to help the customer be successful is very important. And that means that you may be providing them with translations of data sheets and pamphlets. You may provide them with web page content in Japanese. You may provide them with training materials. And then depending upon the product, you will make a decision on what level of product localization is necessary. Having the right tools for the sales partner to go out and market and sell to the potential end users is really, really important.
And let's say that you do make a deal with them. How does the payment cycles work in terms of paying your channel partners?
Typically, I would say it's about 60 days. It varies according to the company, typically from 30 to 60 days. And that may vary according to time or the company that you're working with. Different companies have different policies, but that's about it. The important thing is to understand what they need in what format also, so that you can make the process efficient, minimize the cycles. You do it once and you do it right.
I want to ask you more towards the startups. So like for a startup to consider a channel partner, because I think we do have a pretty good amount of SaaS companies who are run by foreigners who listen to the podcast. But I think at what stage of the company's growth would you recommend getting a channel partner?
That's a very interesting question. First of all, they need to have already sold their product. The product needs to be finished. There needs to be a deployment process. You need to have received some success, meaning the product is commercial. I mean, if you're making obligations to a sales partner to install a product within a certain period of time, your product must have a certain degree of quality, a certain degree of maturity, where you can make the decision that, yes, I can deploy my product, let's say, within 30 days or 60 days or whatever time it requires. But what you don't want to do is make a promise that you can't fulfill. And so I think that in terms of having a channel partner, you first need to achieve that. Then you need to have sold your product successfully in terms of achieving a use case that you can show the channel partner. I think the business model is very, very important. By working with a channel partner, can you generate with them enough sales revenues, not only for yourself, but also for them? Does the business model make sense? In terms of channel partners, you need to be thinking about the market, where those channel partners are focused. Is the time ripe to sell into that market? For instance, the SaaS market in Japan is much smaller than the SaaS market in the United States. And so in terms of product maturity, in terms of your marketing, is this the right time to be entering the Japanese market with your SaaS product? Are you providing a solution that meets with the urgent needs and requirements of organizations in Japan by generating a significant value add? So I think that should enter into the equation in terms of timing. You can be too early, you can be too late too, but what is the best timing for you to be entering? The other thing to be thinking about, do you have the resources? Do you have the bandwidth to support the partner? You're making an obligation to provide training, to provide support. Do you have the resources that you can allocate to support that partner effectively? And then finally, do you have a means by which to manage? If you're doing direct sales and now you're adding on channel partners, what is the impact on your direct sales revenues going to be? Can you afford the royalty, the sales discount you're going to be providing to that sales partner? Will you still be able to make a profit? That needs to be taken into close account as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's say there's no one way to do everything. It's really, you have to look at the situation, evaluate the parameters, and make a decision based on it. But sometimes I see, because I do interact with startups, and they're kind of looking just for that one answer, like a kind of a cookie cutter answer.
But unfortunately, it takes time to sell product in Japan, and it takes time for the Japanese company to decide whether or not they can trust you or not. One of your other speakers, Timothy Connor, said, you got to face it. Everything in Japan takes 6 times longer. You got to build that into your equation.
But I like how once you establish that partnerships, relationships, and trust, it really does have cumulative interest in Japan.
Exactly. I fully agree with you. Once you've established the partnership and you're able to bring on the first few clients, and you can see that there is market opportunity, that working together you can achieve success, what happens is that your sales partner almost becomes like an extension of your own company. You're really working together, and it's repeating the process, it's optimizing the process, that together you enjoy mutual success.
And do you have any requests or any last thoughts for the audience?
In terms of my last comments or advice, it would be, it's not really most important what is selling the best in the market or what is selling the best in the United States, but it's really finding out what interests you in terms of what you're doing, what product you're bringing to market, whether or not it's a SaaS product or something that's installed on a company's network, or it's educational product. My message is that each of us needs to find out what interests us. And it does vary from one person to the next. And finding that out, what it is that you want to spend your time doing and what goals you want to achieve. Right? Are they technical? Are they sales? Are they marketing? But find out what interests you, and then find out companies that can offer you the opportunities to realize those goals. I think that's one thing I would say. The other thing I would mention or I advise is whatever products and services you bring to market in Japan, really try to understand whether or not those products and services represent a significant value add for the end user, especially now where we're going through times of inflation and possible future recession. It's really important that if you're coming into a new area of business, that business offering can help your future customers to solve an important goal or to achieve something that's really important to them. I think that if it's a luxury product or one that is not really needed, quite frankly, the amount of time, effort, and the challenge and the probability of success is probably much less. Position yourself well to provide something that the market really needs. I think bringing on the right partners that have goals that are well aligned with your own, same interest, skills that are similar, overlapping, if you will, that can help you to optimize the probability of success.
Yeah, just having the right partner who really owned their end and us owning our end can really create beautiful things.
Exactly. It's kind of like a baseball team. If everybody on the team is really a great first base player, well, it's going to be a lot more difficult for that team to achieve success. We need a diversified set of skills, capabilities, working together as a team to really bring that product, that service to market most effectively. So we need people that are good at playing pitcher or second base, third base as well.
Thank you so much, John.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I wish you the best of luck and success with your future podcast.